Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Kopylech, and I am the Assistant Director, Operations and Communications for the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta. To begin our conference, CIUS acknowledges that we have traveled from our place of work and play on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional land of Amiskwaci Waskahayan, to our nation's capital, on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. We respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and all First Nations people of Canada, whose presence continues to enrich our vibrant communities. Welcome, Witayemo, bienvenue. The Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, Forum for Ukrainian Studies, is proud to host this international invitational conference here in Ottawa and eager to engage in new conversations, ideas, and solutions to counter the Russian Federation's practiced and extensive propaganda machine. Today and tomorrow, we're fortunate to have 16 renowned specialists from Canada and other countries, including professional journalists and media experts, political scientists, sociologists, and anthropologists, in order to closely examine the propaganda and disinformation warfare strategies that Moscow has been using to destabilize political and social situations in Ukraine, other countries, and indeed in Russia itself. This conference wouldn't be possible without a grant from the Mobilizing Insights in Defense and Security program of the Department of National Defense and sponsorship from the Cool Institute for Advanced Study at the University of Alberta and the Chair of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Ottawa. Now, without further ado, please let me introduce the creator, lead organizer, and chair of our conference, Oleksandr Pankieiev, Editor-in-Chief, Forum for Ukrainian Studies, Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. Oleksandr.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the conference. 3 years ago, on February 21st, 2022, Russia launched its full-scale invasion, marking a dramatic escalation of the war that began in 2014. When Russia's special forces began the occupation of Crimea, which was the start of the war that Europe has not seen since the end of the World War II. With numerous destroyed villages, towns, cities, millions of displaced civilians, dozens of thousands killed and tortured in occupied territories, and thousands of abducted Ukrainian children. However, it is critical to acknowledge that this war is not solely fought by military means, on the ground, in the air, or at sea. It is equally being fought in the realms of information, memory, emotions, media, and digital communications. It is also a war for the minds and hearts of the people, both within Ukraine and globally. Russia's information warfare has become a key instrument in shaping international discourses, undermining democratic institutions, and molding the realities of the war. Russia's use of disinformation, propaganda, and cyber attacks has played a significant role in its strategies and used throughout the war. Understanding these tactics is crucial for analyzing how the war has unfolded and preparing for future challenges and also possible escalations. Information warfare is a concept that was evolved significantly over the past decade, especially with the rise of digital technologies, social media platforms, and cyber capabilities. We no longer live in an era where information is just a passive medium. It has become an active weapon, a tool that can be used to shape reality, influence decisions, and create fractures within societies. The nature of the information environment in which this war is being fought is also far different from that of the past ones. The speed at which information can be disseminated, the reach it can have, the sophistication with which it can be tailored and targeted are all elements that have transformed how information is used as a weapon by Russia and also its allies. Today's conference seeks to examine these strategies from multiple angles, drawing on a range of comparative perspectives. We are fortunate to be joined by a distinguished group of scholars, analysts, and experts from various disciplines and regions. who will discuss the diverse facets of information warfare, from historical and geopolitical perspectives to methodological approaches used in modern media manipulation. They will provide a critical insight into the mechanics of information warfare, the role of media in conflict, the political and military strategies behind these campaigns, and the ethical and legal dimensions that arise from countering digital technologies as instruments of war. Our speakers will also delve into the implications of this warfare for democracy, human rights, the rule of law and education, media freedom, especially in an era where information and manipulation of information has the potential to alter the very fabric of society. Ukraine and Ukrainians have been center targets of Russia's information operations, predating the beginning of the war in 2014. Russia's influence has shaped Ukraine's representation in media, academia, and public discourses in the West, distorting global perceptions of the country and its people. This conference is organized by the Forum for Ukrainian Studies, an analytical publication project within the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies at the University of Alberta. With nearly 50 years of expertise, CIUS remains committed to advancing research and fostering informed scholarly discussions about Ukraine. The most effective tools against propaganda and disinformation are rigorous, fact-based research and education, and that cultivate critical thinking. They are long-term strategies. Their result may not be immediate, but they lay down the foundation for a stable and democratic society, the one that is most resilient to manipulation and propaganda. In this vein, the Forum for Ukrainian Studies strives to provide a platform for in-depth discussion among scholars, experts, and practitioners, a profound understanding of Ukraine as a key actor in the rapidly evolving political landscape. That is why this conference is also one of the forum's efforts to broaden our understanding of Ukraine, but this time by understanding and untangling Russia's propaganda about Ukraine. Thank you, and I hope that you will join the conference.
And now, to bring greetings, Professor and Kopylech Chair of Ukrainian Culture and Ethnography, Department of Modern Languages and Cultural Studies, Faculty of Arts, University of Alberta, and our esteemed Director of the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, Natalia Khanenko-Friesen.
Greetings all. Welcome to the National Arts Center. Welcome to the conference held in this beautiful, unceded Anishinaabe and Algonquin lands. Welcome also to the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. Established in 1976 on the Treaty 6 territory, the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies is a global leader in our field. The Institute is dedicated to the production, dissemination, preservation of expert knowledge about Ukrainians in Canada and worldwide. Located in Edmonton and Toronto and with an office in Lviv, CIUS facilitates sustained scholarly engagement in cooperation between Canada and Ukraine, partner institutions and researchers around the globe, as well as between different cultural groups, constituencies, again in Canada, around the world. We collaborate effectively and extensively with partners outside of Ukrainian studies and take pride in this very undertaking. Multidisciplinary in its work, CIUS integrates the humanities and social sciences in their scholarly agenda. Amongst our 11 endowed centers, programs, and units, Contemporary Ukraine Studies program stands out with its Forum for Ukrainian Studies, now an internationally recognized analytical platform that has been working around the clock over the last 3 years, fighting the disinformational fog that is continually generated by Russia, the aggressor state pursuing its neo-colonial, neo-imperial war against Ukraine. It escapes no one in this room and in broader community that in the current climate of highest geopolitical uncertainty, the timing of our CIUS conference is crucial. It is also telling that we are hosting this conference in Ottawa on the invitation from and with the financial support of the Department of National Defense in partnership with the Embassy of Ukraine and in collaboration with our colleagues in the University of Ottawa, Chair of Ukrainian Studies, local friends, supporters of our institute right here in the capital. Conceived as in-depth analytical discussion of Russia's ideological manipulation of information as a key tool in the war against Ukraine, the conference was called to expose the strategies and mechanisms of aggressive and systemic disinformation that Russia pursues in its effort to obliterate the Ukrainian state from the international arena and the Ukrainian nation as an agent of history. I'm sure we will hear today and tomorrow again and again how strategically important, not just for Ukrainian studies scholars, not just for Ukraine, but for Canada overall, that our conference, a collaboration of many, is set to lead this important discussion in Canada's capital. Over the last few weeks, scholars and political analysts have been increasingly at loss trying to find the right words to explain in real time the geopolitical turmoil in which Canada and the democratic world has found themselves recently. The repeated and ongoing dangerous and destructive attacks on international world order, peace, and democracy coming from the leadership of our closest ally south of the 49th parallel turned the tables around. It is not just Ukraine that falls victim to these informational attacks, but Canada and other democratic nations as well. In the light of these threats, it has become obvious to so many that today's conversation on Russia, disinformation war, does not concern just Ukraine. This conversation is of highest relevance to Canada and its very existence as a free and sovereign state. Those of us in the Ukrainian studies and related fields are now finding ourselves on the intellectual front lines, sharing with so many others our expertise in how to understand this disinformation warfare, how to spot it, and how to fight it for the benefit of all. 5 years ago, working at the Institute on our mission and vision statement, we arrived at the very important idea that whatever we do at the Institute has to focus on doing Ukrainian studies for a better future. Today, I want to thank our partners, sponsors, contributors to this very important conference for joining us on this important mission. Your work during the next 2 days is an affirmation that the aspirational idea that we've been working for bears much weight for Ukraine, Canada, global democracy and peace. I thank you for all the work, and I'm looking forward to productive exchanges. May these exchanges lead us to some real-life solutions on how to make the world better. Thank you.
I would now like to ask our partner and respected colleague, Dominique Arel, Associate Professor and Chair of Ukrainian Studies, University of Ottawa, to share a few words.
Well, thank you, Andrea, Stefka, Natalia, Oleksandr, for this, I should say, incredibly timely conference in these dramatic times. Obviously, there's the 30-year anniversary on Monday, so that was the timing, the initial purpose of the timing, and now we know what we're facing. I'm very honored, in the name of the Chair of Ukrainian Studies, to be one of the co-sponsors of this event. You know, the Chair, we focus largely on social sciences, but in a sense, we defer a lot to the mothership, the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, who have been historically very good to us. We have 2 endowments. The second one is specifically to fund doctoral students for 5 years. And we have a lot of doctoral students. 4 of them did field work during the full-scale invasion. That is in the last 3 years. I'm not supposed to say that publicly because the university didn't want us to send a student. I said, well, they're going anyway, but, you know, away from the front, but everywhere is dangerous. And the reason I'm saying that is that we couldn't have that endowment from a donor in Edmonton without the partnership of the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. So that's Ukrainian Studies. We work together here in Canada and also with the American and European institutes. At the chair, we have the annual Danilov research seminar on contemporary Ukraine in September. That's kind of our calling card. And we also collectively, my colleagues, organize a big convention at Columbia University, which is much bigger than Ukraine, and it's basically the whole of Central and Eastern Europe. But Ukraine keeps growing. We're going to have 35 panels in May at Columbia. So that's what we do at the chair, other than the research. A few words on the topic at hand. We're going to hear from experts in the next 2 days on disinformation at a moment where basically the government of the United States is essentially verbatim, although Trump is adding a few things, repeating the disinformation that we've been submerged with. I was about to say for 3 years, but it's really for, what is it now, 11 years? Some would say 50 years, 100 years, okay, but at least since 2014. That we didn't see coming fully as such a very frightening turnaround. Now, in this disinformation, as we know, it's the legitimacy of the Ukrainian president, we all know the war, it's about the legitimacy of the Ukrainian state and the Ukrainian nation. So we have to gear ourselves up for, it looks like, if there is to be a temporary ceasefire, because obviously there won't be a peace agreement, we all know what the so-called demands of Russia are. It seems now that the American, Trump, and with his sidekick Elon Musk are pushing massively for elections on the grounds of the delegitimization. So that's going to be the main informational battle in the short term, in the short and middle term. And these elections, if ever they happen, can only happen with some kind of protection against further attacks. That's unlikely to come from the Americans, but we see, and that's my next point, that ultimately individuals, decision makers, people collectively make history. I mean, the Ukrainians have taught that for 3 years. 3 years ago, they didn't have many weapons. The massive aid was after. We all know the story. They were supposed to last a week, 2 weeks. If it wasn't clear 3 years ago that the full-scale invasion is a threat to the international security, to the freedom, to the security of democracies, that includes us, that includes all of Europe. It should include all of the world, but at least in the West. If it wasn't clear 3 years ago, I think now it's in our face, because suddenly the threat is two-pronged, coming from Russia and from the United States. So we're having a conference at a moment of clarity, I would say, where Canadians never felt as Ukrainians or Europeans as ever, because we're all in the same boat. The resistance, if you wish, has to be political, has to be military. We see quite astounding, almost like announcements made by France, by Denmark, and hopefully Canada will follow soon in terms of we have to understand the threat is conventional, but the threat is also informational, so conventional and informational. And again, it's through collective endeavors that threats can be overcome. Thank you for your attention. I'm sure we're going to have a great conference.
We are honored to welcome several special guests and have them share a few words with you as well today. Here with us is Andrii, Bukvych, Deputy Head of Mission, Minister, Counselor, Embassy of Ukraine to Canada.
Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed policymakers and scholars, in interesting times we are living indeed. Just a week ago, I remember as back in 2022 in February, when I've been charged d'affaires at the Ukrainian embassy. My mission, my goal, my task, my duty was to explain what happens in Ukraine, why Russia invaded Ukraine, what happens on the ground. Talking to my contacts, friends and colleagues at the government, at the parliament, in academia, I dared to provide an example just to illustrate how the big challenge, a threat to Ukraine is, saying, you know, this is, again, back then it was completely off the record. Can you imagine, please, just to understand what happens in Ukraine, can you imagine if the United States would somehow, at some point, invaded Canada? At that point, it was absolutely a theoretical exercise. But today, it seems like not just a Netflix anti-utopian TV show, the next series. This is a challenge. And the main battle happens not on the ground. Because in Ukraine, we defend our land. Our brave men and women in uniform are doing their best. They sacrifice their lives with the courage. They defend not only Ukraine as such and Ukrainian people and our values and our identity and our history and our language. They also defend a fundamental right of a human being to be free to choose destiny, to be free to choose future, to be free to choose path. At some point, Ukraine has chosen to be a part of European family where it belongs all the time. But unfortunately, this was not in line with the plans of dictators and authoritarian regime in Russia. Back then, indeed, as previous speakers said, we didn't have weapons, we didn't have much, if any, political support. At many capitals, our ministers, our presidents heard, you don't have resources, perhaps you will survive for a couple of days, perhaps a week, but you have to find a solution with Russia. 3 years passed. With the courage of Ukrainian people, with the support of our international friends and partners, we are able to stop Russia. The result of our effort that Russia at this point is as weak as never before. Yes, you are reading the news about we are losing dead square kilometers, or they successfully making a counteroffensive in Ukraine. But please guess the price of those small victories on the ground. Russia is bleeding. When Russia is bleeding and when they're near the end, their most powerful tools is to influence our mind, to change the information and communication landscape, and to persuade everybody that Ukraine is doomed, that Russia is winning. And unfortunately, there are many, many people who are prone to this kind of influence. That's why I think it's very important and timely to have a conference like this, just to scrutinize what happens in Ukraine, in Russia, in all the capitals, what happens with the public, what happens with the public opinion, what happens with us. Are we able to have a realistic picture of what happens? Do we have a courage to resist challenges in communication information space as well? This is very important. That's why I'm extremely helpful to the organizers of this conference. It's a privilege to address you today. Again, the conference is very timely. I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, Pani Natalia Khanenko-Friesen, and the Forum for Ukrainian Studies, Pan Oleksandr, Pankieiev, for your leadership in organizing this event. I would like to thank you all. I would like to wish us all a very insightful, fruitful conversation. I think that academia has this duty to preserve knowledge, to educate public, and to tell us all what happens. You know, there is a little jokes I've heard about the economists. When two economists meet somewhere at the conference and discussing great turmoil and crisis, financial crisis like 2008, let's say, and one is talking to another and say, can you please say what happens? The other economists say, yes, I can explain you everything. The other one says, well, I can't explain it either, but please tell me what happens. So hopefully, as a result of this conference, you will not only find to some interesting conclusion, you will find perhaps new concepts or theories, or you will educate a lot of people. But I think it's very important to communicate what you find out. And in this regard, I remember I've been at the screening of a documentary called Intercepted. The director, Oksana Karpovich, she used the open materials, open sources, the conversation of Russian soldiers on the front line with their relatives, wives, sisters, mothers. And Russian soldiers openly, freely shared the emotions, what they went through. It's very interesting, sometimes disgusting, but the director made a documentary out of these materials. I asked her what inspired you to create this film. She said, I remember 2014 when Russia first invaded Ukraine. And after 2, 3, 5, 6 years, it seems that the world has forgotten what happened. It was a business as usual. Russia, using strong tools to promote its propaganda, its narratives, was able to persuade that in 2014 nothing has happened. And the occupation of Crimea and east of Ukraine, this is just a normal business, one of the tools of realpolitik, if you wish. So she said, for me it was very important to leave proofs, facts for the future, for other generations, for other people, to have proofs that these atrocities were committed by Russians, that Russia, in fact, invaded Ukraine, and this is a hard fact in truth that cannot be ignored, and you cannot lie about this, no matter who you are, and no matter what position you take. Thank you so much, and Slava Ukraini!
I now invite His Excellency Witold Dzielski, Ambassador of Poland to Canada, to bring greetings.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to the organizers for organizing this timely event. The University of Alberta is well recognized in this city. It's the second or the third time that I'm participating in an event organized by your university here, and I don't see many other universities, to tell you the truth, doing such a from outside of Ottawa doing such a marvelous job. So congratulations, and your events are always timely and relate to very important events. Just to take it off my checklist, you're coming from Edmonton, and nobody mentioned the Connor McDavid of Oilers. Poland doesn't have a position in this game. However, it's my job to support Canadian NHL team. Once again, thank you for inviting us, and it's a great pleasure and honor to be here among friends, our colleagues from Embassy of Ukraine, Lithuania, Latvia, the partners that have been engaged in supporting Ukraine from day one and even much before that. It goes without saying that we will continue to provide support. Let me just make 2 points. One brief Polish point on Ukraine and one brief point on disinformation, misinformation, interference, whichever the term is. I will not get into the terminology, but this is something that you will discuss as well, I'm quite certain today. Point number 1 on Poland. Poland, as I mentioned before, has been supportive of Ukraine from not from day one, but from not from 3 years ago, but much earlier, just like our neighbors were quite certain that this is something that is going to happen. As foreseeing the future was not considered rational for some time by some actors and some allies, but unfortunately we proved them wrong. We are very unhappy about this and about the way things have developed. But we've been supporting from the very beginning. It continued. Poland has been heavily engaged, as you know, in providing support to Ukraine in all the possible areas, in the military support. And right now, the 46th package of military support is being prepared for Ukraine in terms of humanitarian support, in terms of support for refugees, millions of whom have either passed through Poland or stayed in Poland in a more permanent manner. Today, as Andrii mentioned, the tables are turning to a certain extent, and Poland believes that we have a special position in the sort of new discussion that is taking place. Taking away all the internal discussions in Poland, all the important political actors continue to provide political support to Ukraine. There is the American context, which is very important. Poland has always been a very important element of the European conversation with the United States, including President Trump. During Trump won, we were one of the leading countries in terms of having conversation, being friends with the US administration. We are trying to preserve that situation right now, among other reasons, in order to explain to the new administration why is it absolutely crucial and necessary to continue the support, the positive thinking about the Ukrainian cause. Except for personal links and relationships that we have, it's also the expectations that the Americans have vis-a-vis other allies, including the defense spending. Poland today is the leading country in terms of defense spending and in entire NATO. We are getting close to 5% of our GDP. This is very well recognized by Americans, and that's why we have very close contacts with them, and we are already presented quite often as an example within the EU structures, which again gives us a little bit more of a leverage of having conversations on Ukraine. And those conversations on the side of Polish politicians are taking place with the American administration, and we will do our best, and our politicians are doing their best to try to persuade, to explain. So that's point one, the Polish political context in the situation we are right now. And the second point, the topic of your conversation here, which is absolutely fascinating, very timely, and at the same time quite worrisome, I would say, because the fact that we are having so many conversations right now internally in all of our countries, that we've prepared all the mechanism to respond to disinformation, to interference, etc., I will state the obvious. I mean, we are under attack. The level of our sense of necessity for being prepared, it just exemplifies the fact that we are really heavily being attacked. I'm happy that you're meeting here, because it's the academic level is important. The politicians quite often have operate on the big chessboard. They work within the real politics as probably it should be. Then some of the civic organizations operate in the area of emotions quite often, as it should be. But academia is able to bring the two groups together and present certain models of thinking which are quite often most reasonable. In terms of fighting disinformation, misinformation, interference, manipulations, the countries of our region are very active, including Poland. We are a target for Russian disinformation, all sorts of aggression campaigns, because this is not only disinformation. Poland is being attacked in a kinetic way as well. There are arsons, there are hostile activities taking place in Poland, and it's worth to understand that the Russian operations are quite extensive. But in the area of disinformation, we are already well organized. We work with our international partners, including Canada. We have introduced, and we are introducing additional layers of systems in different ministries. On the level of the foreign ministry, we have a plenipotentiary that deals with that topic. We have a separate department. We have institutes that are engaged in dealing with that topic on cyber level. And again, we are working closely with many of our allies, including our Baltic partners, from whom we are learning quite a lot, to tell you the truth, because they've been introducing also very important and successful mechanisms in that regard. Let me stop here. Once again, congratulations on on this initiative, and I would love to be present here for long. I cannot obviously, but I'm sure this will be a fascinating debate and a conversation that you will have. So, congrats once again. Thank you.
Please welcome His Excellency Egidijus Meilūnas, Ambassador of Lithuania to Canada.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me, together with my colleagues, to attend this important conference. It's a great privilege to be with you today. It's a very timely conference, as was already mentioned. Today it's the eve of a very tragic anniversary. 3 years ago, Russia launched brutal genocidal war against Ukraine. And today I would like, taking this opportunity, to send a message to our Ukrainian friends, our brothers and sisters. Dear Ukrainian friends, Lithuania was, is, and always will be with you, no matter what. Lithuania will stand along with you, together with Canada, Poland, Latvia, Estonia, and all other freedom-loving and democratic nations, united in the belief that Ukraine's fight is our fight. Ukraine's victory will secure not only the future of Ukraine, but the very future of freedom and democracy in our world. Let me remind you that the declaration from NATO summit in Washington made it clear. It repeated also the same statement from NATO summit in Vilnius and previously in Madrid. I quote, "Russia is the most significant and direct threat to ally security. Russia is the most significant and direct threat at least to 32 countries, Canada, United States, Hungary, Poland, Lithuania, and many others included. This regime, Russian regime, is fueled by hatred for democracy, for free people, allied with other autocracies like China, which is also great supporter of Russia. In the same declaration, you can find another important statement that, I quote, China is key enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine. Russia, allied with China and other autocratic regimes, they are determined to destroy everything we cherish. In the face of this, Ukraine stands as our shield. Ukraine is protecting us all. Ukraine today is protecting us from the most significant and direct threat, paying a huge price. So it's our responsibility now more than ever to intensify, to enhance support for Ukraine. We cannot and must not entertain the idea of appeasing Russia spreading terror and destruction. History has taught us harsh lessons, reminding us that appeasing dictators only leads to catastrophe. Bloody deals with Hitler in 1938 in Munich and with Stalin in 1945 in Yalta caused terrible sufferings, immense losses, and enormous damages to many nations. We Lithuanians, Poles, Latvians, Estonians, we know this better than anyone. Lithuania, devastated by brutal Russian occupation, which lasted for almost 50 years, because of Yalta appeasement, lost 25% of its population. Russians killed tens of thousands of our compatriots. Hundreds of thousands were sent to Siberia and other remote places. Hundreds of thousands, let's say in this way, they were lucky to escape from communism and to emigrate to democratic countries like United States, Canada, Australia, and others. That is a huge loss of our population, but also our economy was totally destroyed. Our country's natural development was terminated, stopped for at least 50 years. I am not a historian. My professional background is maybe a little bit unusual. I am former medical doctor and lawyer, now diplomat. I am not a historian, but I have a feeling that in 1945 there was no need to sell us to Russians. You know, at that time, Russia was quite weak. The end of the Second World War. Great powers were quite strong. Probably nobody knows how those discussions between three or more leaders went on. But I truly believe that Stalin deceived Western leaders and used the same arguments we hear today from Putin. You should accept this new reality. Our troops are already in Latvia, Poland, Estonia, so don't mess with us. And we lost 25% of our people because of such an agreement. So this is our moment now. It is our responsibility to prevent history from repeating itself, to stop a new Yalta, a new global catastrophe from unfolding. And we can only do this by standing firm, no matter what, supporting Ukraine and ensuring that Russia pays the highest price for its aggression. Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, why Russia is so brutal, why Russians are so cruel? Killing innocent children, civilians, shelling cities, towns, and villages in Ukraine, because on one side they committed many terrible crimes against nations, especially neighboring nations. Just please analyze what last 100 years of Russia's history. I mentioned tragedy of our country, Poland, Latvia. There were many more. And Russians never have been punished, never have been brought to justice for their crimes. They are so brutal because they have strong feeling of impunity. So justice is crucial. So our message to those who believe in appeasing Russia, we say, don't trust them. They will definitely 100% will deceive you. They lied in 1994, signing Budapest Agreement and promising security guarantees and guarantees for territorial integrity of Ukraine. Putin himself publicly many times said he is not interested to attack Ukraine. He brutally lied. So they are lying also today. That leads me to the theme of your conference, Russia's information warfare. And I was thinking, what might be a central starting point in this regard? When I listened to Lavrov's statement 2 days ago, when after meeting in Riyadh, one journalist asked him, did you discuss with American partners issue of attacking, energy infrastructure? Do you know what Lavrov answered? He said, no, we didn't. Because Russia never attacked Ukrainian energy infrastructure, and yesterday and day before yesterday they attacked again. So my thesis is Russians are always lying. 2 years ago I found on internet a fantastic cartoon made by our Ukrainian friends depicting the same Lavrov, war criminal Lavrov, who was talking with himself. And Lavrov is asking Lavrov, what I have to do more to deceive those idiots, Westerners, to such extent that they cannot distinguish when I am telling the truth and when I am lying. And then Lavrov is answering to himself, to lie all the time. So you might argue with me, maybe Russians just lying in 67% of time, maybe 90% I'm saying Russians are lying all the time. And what to do with this? I fully subscribe to statements already presented here, education, long-term strategy, arguments, facts. Absolutely, 100%. But we need to protect us right now. We know that imperialistic fascist Russia understands only one language, power. So in the field of information warfare, I just can share, I believe, fantastic Lithuania's example. When Russia started genocidal war against Ukraine, we immediately banned more than 80 Russian media outlets, TV, radio stations, internet websites. For those who are just for curiosity would like being visiting Lithuania to learn what Russia today is saying, it would be mission impossible. And it works. Yes, I should be frank, we had discussions, tough discussions with our partners in Brussels about freedom of speech. But they accepted our argument that war propaganda, encouragement to kill innocent people, hate speech has nothing in common with freedom of speech. And in this regard, it's difficult to understand position of some major global social media outlets. I don't know how it is in Canada, in your countries, but in Lithuania we have quite not encouraging experience when they are blocking, banning profiles, posts of those people who just name the spade, saying that Russia is the aggressor, Russians are murderers. At the same time, I believe you noticed many times, there are thousands, maybe tens of thousands, true or fake profiles on all social media outlets glorifying Russia's aggression against Ukraine and encouraging to kill. And I would like to demonstrate very short, 20 seconds video, which was posted on YouTube some 10 years ago. You will hear in Russian language, I will translate later to you, a person, old man, saying some terrible things. At that time, at least, he was professor of Moscow University, and that is part of his lecture to his students. 2015, I believe.
Убивать и убивать больше. Я думаю, убивать и убивать больше. Разговоров никаких не должно быть. Как профессор, я так считаю.
This person is Oleksandr Dugin, so-called philosopher, so-called professor, in fact, creator of Russia's fascist ideology, Ruski Mir, Russian worlds, which encourages to exterminate other nations. And this is what he is saying. He was asked what to do with Ukrainians, 2014 or 2015. And he answers in Russian language, to kill them, to kill them, to kill them. That I am saying as your professor. And this video has tens of thousands of views. That's not acceptable. I personally tried to report many times to YouTube, no success. So, yes, that is a question, how to fight with Russia information warfare. Ladies and gentlemen, let's unite our efforts, give much more support to Ukraine. Together we stand strong. Ukraine's victory is the victory of every free soul. Let us fight for it with everything we have. In Lithuania we say, whatever Ukraine's victory takes. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful discussion.
Thank you. And for our final greetings, please welcome His Excellency Kaspars Ozoliņš, Ambassador of Latvia to Canada.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you for organizing this conference. I'm glad that you have gathered so many experts and sociologists and anthropologists, as I hear, also from other parts of Canada, but also from other countries. Because what is important for us to understand? I'm basically sharing all ideas that have been expressed so far. But basically, the revanchist power that is bent on changing borders or erasing Ukraine is using all of the weapons that are available. Information is one of them. So the information battlefield is one of the continuums that they are using even before, during, and after the kinetic actions. And we understand that it's not just targeted towards Ukraine. All of us are targeted. Ukrainians are targeted. Russian domestic audiences are targeted. So the supporters of Ukraine in the world are targeted, but also the countries who think that this is, let's say, a regional thing and doesn't really relate to their daily needs and everything. So one of the nice things that you have in the conference, indeed, that you have international audience, and I would encourage you to continue in the same way in the future as well, to bring us, all of us together, and to understand that we are being attacked through media, through information outlets on a daily basis, regardless if we are Ukrainians, regardless if we are physically in Ukraine or not. I think that's my main message to the conference. The other thing, of course, I want to say, the last time I was in this room was probably almost 3 years ago. That's when my Prime Minister visited Canada right after Russia's full-scale aggression against Ukraine, and we had a dinner here with the Deputy Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland. And then, of course, the topic number 1, number 2, and number 3 on the agenda was Ukraine, how we can support Ukraine in its just and defensive war against the brutal aggressor. And since then, all of our conversations, wherever we go, topic number 1 is Ukraine, how we help Ukraine. By helping Ukraine, we help ourselves, and we help international rules-based order, as we believe has been conducive to our, let's say, democratic growth and well-being in our countries after we regained back independence. So this is why we are staunch defenders of that system. So today, when we are again in the fog of information or war, I have to repeat unequivocally, loud and clear, the message from Latvia is that we support territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. We will help Ukraine to reach lasting, just and sustainable peace, and we will help Ukraine thereafter. Ukraine's place is in Europe, Ukraine's place is in NATO, and the success of Ukraine is also has a long-term implications to our own security in Europe, but not only in Europe. As I said, so all of us are targeted, all of us can be considered victims of information attacks, and we need to try to find the best ways to deal with it. I'm saying it because after we regained independence, Baltic states and Latvia were targets of the Russian misinformation in the media, but also in international organizations. So we have gained certain knowledge and experience and have built certain societal resilience, and I'm glad that those issues will be also partially at least covered during this conference in one of the panels. So, but I think in the future conferences, so I guess we will always be willing and able to contribute speakers and the knowledge from our region, from our countries, to enrich the discussion, international discussion on fighting disinformation, misinformation and propaganda. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your generous words. And to all of you who have come from near and far for joining us. It's really nice to see some familiar faces in the audience as well. Thank you.